All right, I think you can go now.
Go ahead.
Yep, you can start.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Faith Bachchan. My group members are Alicia Khan and Sabrina Ramchatar. And today our presentation will be on chapter 12 of the DAFT, which is leadership, power, and influence. I will be starting off the presentation. I'll be focusing on transformational leadership, transactional leadership, the difference between both of these leadership styles, as well as charismatic leadership and the black hat of charisma. Alicia will be following when defining the phrases of power, influence, and leadership, and she'll be discussing 5 types of leader power, as well as historic moments, power, and influence were displayed, and responses of the use of power. Lastly, Sabrina will be discussing control over resources, resources of leader power in organization, and interdependent dependency, and control over information. Starting off, I just wanted to make a note about two leadership styles, which is transformational and charismatic leadership. And one key characteristic between both of these leadership styles is that it is largely based on the leader's personal power rather than their position or authority that they hold. A transformational leader is said to be charismatic, but not all charismatic leaders are transformational. Starting off, we'll be looking at what is transformational leadership. So, transformational leadership is characterized by the ability to bring about significant change in both followers and organizations. These leaders have the ability to lead organizations through strategy, vision, and culture, as well as promote innovation in products and technology. They focus on intangible qualities such as vision, shared values, and ideas in order to build relationships, give larger meaning to separate activities, and provide common ground to endless followers in the change process. Transformational leadership is based on personal values, beliefs, and qualities of the leader rather than the exchange process between leaders and followers, as seen in the transactional leadership style you would see later on. As seen in the DAFT Chapter 12, recent studies support the idea that transformational leaders has a positive impact on follower development and follower performance. Moreover, transformational leadership skills can be learned and are not ingrained in personality characteristics. However, some personality traits may make it easier for a leader to display transformational leadership behaviors. We're going to look at these 4 components of transformational leadership, and an article done by Chioma explains the image here incredibly. Starting off with individualized influence, this describes the charisma that transformational leaders have and their ability to deliver messages simply and the way that they do it. The leaders are exemplary role models and readily trusted and respected by all members of the team. Charisma is one of the essential pieces of this characteristic. Charisma is essential because it shows how a leader can rally followers around a shared vision. Charisma is often expressed by the ability to listen actively, to each member of the team and focus on the present moment. These leaders give praise to individuals of the team with each success, and they are the first to take responsibility when things go wrong. They also provide constructive feedback to each individual team member, and intended influence they also have. It is represented through their curiosity. Curiosity, not intelligence, is the driving force behind the success of these leaders. It is their job to find innovative solutions to problems and create new and dynamic paths for the team to follow. Displays of charisma make it others want to be more like them, and as a role models, members strive to mimic the leader. Secondly, we're going to look at inspirational motivation. Inspirational motivation describes leaders who are motivating and willing to commit to a vision. They encourage the team members to also commit to this vision by raising team spirit, fostering community, and a sense of purpose. To do this, they must have a simplicity in communication. This means their communication styles must be best studied best suited for each team member. Leaders speak clearly and concisely to easily articulate their vision to each member. This provides structure and order so members can execute tasks without confusion. Leaders articulate a clear plan for the future and communicate expectations from the beginning when the team starts working. Leaders must also express their messages with a sense of authority in order for the members to respect their thoughts and trust their visions. Along with this, leaders must also be upbeat and positive, bringing energy to a room with enthusiasm. As a visionary, transformational leaders use these skills to look forward to future goals and have foresight to small obstacles that may hinder their vision. Thirdly is intellectual stimulation, which describes leaders by encouraging their members to think outside the box and be innovative. Stimulating followers promotes critical thinking and problem-solving skills in order to improve the group and organization as a whole. This challenges the normal beliefs of a group and encourages the team to perform better than they ever thought possible. Encouraging innovation involves each team member in the decision-making process and fosters a sense of importance for the organization to have overall success. The important thing about this leadership is that it does not criticize the thoughts or opinions of the members. Premature shutting down of ideas can create a climate of distrust and hurt, and because of this, members must therefore gently change the followers' solving and brainstorm new and innovative ways to achieve their team's goals. In short, leaders must recognize that there are many ways to achieve a goal and there is no ordinary path for innovation. Being a transformational leader requires risk-taking, creativity, curiosity, and openness to new ideas from each individual member. Lastly is individualized consideration. This is the degree to which a leader attends to each follower's needs, personal needs. Transformational leadership encourages members by focusing on each person and how the goal affects them overall. This means recognizing and valuing the motivations, desires, and the needs of the individual members. Upon recognizing the motivation behind the drive of each individual member, the leaders can then provide opportunities to customize training. This allows the team to grow and learn in an environment they feel comfortable in. Engaging individuals require emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence includes showing genuine compassion, empathizing with the needs of individuals, and encouraging the ongoing personal growth of individuals. When leaders take into account the emotions of their followers, they can learn how to encourage them even more. Emotionally intelligent leaders connect with members and build a bond based on trust, and leaders act as mentors and coaches who are willing and open to listening to the followers' concerns. This is not surprising considering that leaders accomplish change by building networks of positive relationships. Based on everything that was said to you guys so far, who do you think are some transformational leaders? All right. Okay, so we have transformational leaders all around us. As seen in these three photos here, these are some examples of transformational leaders that I found. We have Jeff Bezos, the Nike Corporation, and Steve Jobs. This is because they are marked with positive impact in productivity and success, and they are at the top of each of their individual industries. There are many other transformational leaders, but I just wanted to talk about these three today. So following the four components of transformational leadership, we're going to look at Jeff Bezos first. Individualized influence. Bezos leads by example with his relentless drive and customer obsession, earning loyalty from employees and customers alike. Inspirational motivation. He articulates a clear vision of innovation and convenience in springing his team to revolutionize retail and technology. Intellectual stimulation. Bezos encourages experimentation and risk-taking, fostering innovations like Kindle and AWS. Individualized consideration. He invests in developing talent and creating a culture that supports employee growth and autonomy. Now moving on to the Nike Corporation. Individualized influence. Nike's leaders embody the commitment to excellence and health, becoming aspirational figures for customers worldwide. Inspirational motivation. The Just Do It campaign unites and energizes customers and employees around a shared vision of personal achievement. Intellectual stimulation. Nike drives innovation by continuously challenging product design and marketing strategies to meet evolving consumer needs. Individualized consideration. The brand creates personalized customer experience through exclusive membership and targeted community programs. Lastly, we're going to look at Apple's Steve Jobs. Individualized performance. Jobs' passion and uncompromising standards set a powerful example that command respect and loyalty. Inspirational motivation. He communicates an compelling vision of revolutionary technology that inspires his team to innovate boldly. Intellectual stimulation. Jobs pushes employees to challenge conventional thinking, resulting in breakthrough products like iPhone and iCloud. Individualized consideration. He personally mentored key innovators, nurturing their talents to drive Apple's success. Now we're going to look at what is transactional leadership. Transactional leadership is a transaction or exchange process between leaders and followers. The leaders recognize the followers' needs and desires and then clarifies how those needs and desires will be satisfied in exchange for meeting the specific objectives or performing certain duties. Thus, followers receive rewards for job performance, whereas leaders benefit from the completion of tasks. Transactional leaders focus on the present and excel at keeping the organization running smoothly and efficiently. They are good at the traditional management functions, such as planning and budgeting, and generally focus on the impersonal aspects of job performance. This leadership is quite effective. By clarifying expectations, leaders help build followers' confidence. In addition, satisfying the needs of subordinates may improve productivity and morale. However, because transactional relationships involves the commitment to following the rules, transactional leaders maintain stability within the organization rather than promoting change. Transactional skills are important for all leaders. However, in today's world, in which organizational success often depends on continuous change, effective leaders also need to use different approaches. So we're going to look at some characteristics of transactional leadership. What are some characteristics of transactional leadership? Because transactional leadership is more structured approach to employee relations, it tends to be thought of as a left brain management style in some words, in comparison to a more right brain approach that's free-form, open to change, and consistently evolving based on employee feedback and participation. Transactional leadership's left brain approach is guided by a form and function. Often it is dedicated to the top-down based of the company rules and more rigid manager-subordinate structure. So some of the common characteristics of these leaders include a focus of short-term goals. This is because efficiency and productivity are paramount, which means managers want to see results and fast. Short-term goals help employees reach objectives faster. Secondly is favoring policy, structure, and rules. Here, leadership behavior is not so much about innovation or out-of-the-box thinking. It's more about following the company's mandates, and the employees who step outside of that structure run a risk of being reprimanded. Next is an emphasis on efficiency. With a strong structure in a place, a strong structure in place, there's no room for innovation, and subordinates are expected to focus all their energy on producing results and as quickly as possible. As said before, there is rewards and reprimands. Subordinates who meet company production goals they get rewarded, while those who don't may receive disciplinary actions. Inflexibility and opposition to change. Transactional leaders aim to uphold the status quo, no questions asked. Deviating from the plan could lead to production delays and other issues that may impact efficiency. Then we then have reactive. Rather than thinking ahead or planning for issues, transactional management tends to react to situations only when they have no other choice. There is then favoring hierarchy. This approach also adheres to the idea that everyone knows their place in the chain of command and does not step outside of the rule or structure that is being upheld. Micromanagement. While not all approaches to transactional leadership include micromanagement, many believe the way to improve employee output and create efficient production is through intensive oversight. This can also extend to the overall approach to the production timeline. We then have practicality. The focus here is on action based on rules and regulations rather than theories based on creative thinking and, well, out of the box thinking, really. The lack of personal connection. Overall, transactional managers don't connect with employees on a personal level. So the focus is mainly on the work at hand, and personal issues aren't able to interfere with the productivity. So that's why they don't really bring it in. So does anybody know who can be a transactional leader based on the explanation? Okay, so we have three transactional leaders here. There's Bill Gates, Sir Alan Sugar, and Vince Lombardi. Bill Gates is an American businessman, philanthropist, and computer scientist. He is best known for co-founding Microsoft, the world's largest software company, and his net worth is 102.4 billion as of 2020. Gates is often considered a transactional leader due to his clear hierarchy and his focus on results. We then have Sir Alan Sugar, who is also a businessman, a television personality, and a political advisor. He is best known for his role in Apprentice and serving as an advisor for a judge and enterprises as well. He's considered a transactional leader because of also his clear hierarchy and the focus on results, which has also helped him succeed personally and professionally. Lastly is Vince Lombardi, who was an American football coach, known for his time with the Green Bay Packers. During his tenure with the Packers, Lombardi led the team to 5 NFL championships, including 2 Super Bowls. As a result, Lombardi was considered one of the greatest coaches in the NFL. He is considered as a transactional leader due to his clear hierarchy as well and the focus on results. So we're going to look at what is the difference between transactional leadership and transformational leadership. So transformational leadership, the focus is on maintaining the status quo and ensuring tasks are completed efficiently. The motivation behind this one is a use for system and rewards. So rewards could be bonuses and punishments could be warnings. There's also the goals, which is the aim is for short-term objectives and to adhere to rules and procedures. The relationship, based on clear exchange between leader and subordinate, focusing on individuals' interests. And it is best for situations that are routine, highly regulated, and require immediate results. As for transformational leadership, it focuses on driving change, innovation, and employee development. The motivation behind this is to inspire and energize followers by creating a clear shared vision. The goal aims for more of long-term rather than short-term, and the personal and professional growth of the employees. The relationship fosters trust, personal relationships, and encourages communication, and it is best for situations that require innovation, change, and or developing performance culture. So now we're going to be looking at what is a charismatic leader or charismatic leadership. So charismatic leaders are leaders who have the ability to inspire and motivate people to do more than they would normally do, despite obstacles and personal sacrifice. These leaders typically instill both an awe and submission in followers, whereas transformational leaders seek to increase the encouragement of the followers. The leaders have an emotional impact on people because they appeal to both the heart and the mind. They may speak emotionally, but about putting themselves on the line for the sake of a mission, and they are perceived as people who persist in spite of great odds against them. Charismatic leaders often engage in troubled times where in a society or in organizations, they have something bad happening or some drastic change, because a strong, inspiring personality can help to reduce stress and anxiety among followers. Charismatic leaders create an atmosphere of change and articulate an individualized vision of the future that is significant, better than what now exists. They have an ability to communicate complex ideas and goals in a clear, compelling way so that everyone understands it clearly and the message that they are trying to bring forth is understood. They inspire followers with abiding faith, even if the faith can be stated in the specific goals, it could be easily attained. Charismatic leaders also act in unconventional ways and use unconventional means to transcend the status quo and create a change. These leaders may sometimes seem like oddballs, but the image only enhances their appeal. The final characteristic of charismatic leaders is that their source of influence comes from personal characteristics rather than a formal position of authority. People admire, respect, and identify with the leader and want to be more like him or her. Although charismatic leaders may be in informal positions of authority, charismatic leadership transcends formal organizational positions because the leader's influence isn't based on anything else but personal qualities rather than power and authority gained by the organization. So we're going to look at some characteristics of charismatic leadership, which was basically continuing from what I said about the leader's influence is not really about the position that they hold, but personal traits that they have. So in the DAFT, it says that the leaders have a shared perspective and individualized vision to make leaders likable and honorable heroes worthy of identification and imitation. So basically wanting to be more like them. They have a sense of trustworthiness as passionate advocacies by incurring great personal risk and cost. Their relation to the status quo, which is it creates an atmosphere of change. Future goals, which idealizes vision that is highly discrepant from the status quo. Articulation, which is strong and inspirational articulation of vision and motivation to lead. Competence, which uses unconventional means to transcend the existing order. And behavior, which is unconventional and counter narrative. And lastly is influence, which is transcends position, personal power based on expertise and respect and admiration for the leader. Here are some examples of charismatic leaders, sorry. So in the DAFT, it has Ammar Khalid, which was a young charismatic Muslim religious leader in Egypt during the Middle East crisis of the early 21st century. Khalid's sermons delivered in an emotional, impassioned manner touched people who were searching for a moderate approach to living as a good Muslim. We also have Lloyd Ward, who was brought in as a chief executive to the United States Olympic Committee at the time when the organization was torn by internal strife and suffering a loss of public trust. The USOC believed that Ward, known as a master motivator with the ability to unite and inspire people with a vision, could use his charisma to heal fractures in the organization and restore the US Olympics to glory. There's then Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela. So Martin Luther King inspired millions with his vision for civil rights, using powerful, heroic, and emotional appeals to motivate followers towards a common cause. And then Nelson Mandela, who led South Africa's transformation with resilience and a clear vision that galvanized the nation, demonstrating empathy and a strong connection with his people. So here's a question now based on all the information gathered about transformational leaders and charismatic leaders. Can one person have both leadership styles? Okay, well, the answer is yes. So one person can have both leadership styles. Starting with Nelson Mandela, he was considered both a charismatic and transformational leader. These leadership styles are often seen overlapping, and he displayed qualities of both to unite Africa and guide this transition from apathy to multicultural democracy. There's then Martin Luther King, who is also considered to have both of these leadership styles. He was often cited as a prime example as he used his charisma as a tool to achieve his visionary goals. Then there is Ronald Reagan, who is also frequently cited as having both of these leadership styles due to his ability to appeal to the followers on a deep emotional level. Beyond his personal charisma, Reagan was also described as a transformational leader who brought about significant change and alignment towards conservative policies, fundamentally shifting the direction of the nation. The last I'll also be looking at the black hat of charisma. One characteristic of charisma noted by most researchers is that it can be both a blessing and a curse. Leaders such as Wilson Churchill, John F. Kennedy, and Gandhi had tremendous charisma, but also did Adolf Hitler and Charles Mason, as well as Idi Amin. Charisma isn't always used to benefit a group, organization, or society. It can also be used for self-serving purposes, which leads to deception, manipulation, and exploitation of others. Because of this biasness of charisma, because of this basis of charisma, it is because of the basis of charisma is emotional rather than logical and rational, it is risky and potentially dangerous. One explanation of the distinction between charisma is that it is, sorry, one explanation for the distinction between charisma that results in positive outcomes and that which results in negative outcomes is the difference between personalized leaders and socialized leaders. Leaders who react to organizational problems in terms of their own needs rather than the needs of the public as a whole can cause disastrous consequences for others. Personalized, charismatic leaders are characterized as selfish, manipulative, and exploitive, whereas charismatic leaders are empowering and supportive. Personalized behavior is based on caring for oneself alone, while socialized behavior is based on valuing others. Studies have shown that personalized, charismatic leaders can have significant detrimental impact on long-term organizational performance. And leaders who have successful, been consistently successful in improving organizational performance has a pattern of socialized behavior. And these are some who has the black hat of charisma, basically. So anybody want to say who has personalized charismatic leadership and who has socialized charismatic leadership? Or they want to guess?
I'm guessing Adolf Hitler is the social and Charles Manson is charismatic.
Yeah, Charles would be more of a personal because it was all about self. He killed people. And people could also argue that Adolf could be personal as well because they could say that he killed people as well for his own benefit. But yeah. They also say that he is social as well because a lot of people thought that he did good for his country. Okay. So now we're going to move on to Alicia's part of the presentation.
Hello and good afternoon. I'm Alicia Pan and I will be taking you through the second segment of our presentation. Power, influence, and leadership. Let's define them accordingly and go through some examples so that we can have a better understanding. What is power? Power in organizations is an invisible but impactful force that allows individuals or departments to influence others to achieve desired outcomes. Although power cannot be seen, its effects are evident in how people act and respond. Power is defined as the potential ability to get others to carry out instructions or do things they might not usually do. This potential becomes real through the use of politics and influence. While the terms power and influence are sometimes used interchangeably, power refers to the capacity to affect others. Here's an example. A radiology supervisor has the power to assign staff to rooms. When the staff follow the assignment, even if they prefer another room, that is the supervisor's influence in action. Influence. What is influence? Influence is the effect a person's actions have on the attitudes, values, beliefs, or actions of others. Influence may be thought of as the degree of actual change. For example, as a child, you may have had the experience of playing a game you didn't really want to play. but there was one person in the group that influenced everybody else to do what he or she wanted to do. Or you may have had changed your college major because of the influence of someone important in your life, or you shifted your beliefs about some social issue based on the influence of a political or religious leader. Although we usually think of power and influence as belonging to the leader, in reality, they result from the interaction of leaders or followers in specific situations, as we would have learned in Chapter 7. Now that we have established the difference between power and influence, let's jump into the 5 bases of power. 5 bases of power are legitimate power or position power, reward power, coercive power, expert power, and referent power. Legitimate power or position power. Legitimate power is the authority a person holds because of their formal position in an organization. When someone becomes a supervisor or a leader, followers generally accept that they have the right to give directions, make decisions, and set goals. Employees comply because they recognize this authority as legitimate and tied to the leader's official role and responsibilities. In many workplaces, especially in North America, people accept that appointed leaders have the rightful power to guide and direct organizational activities. An example of this is in a radiology setting. A radiology supervisor is officially appointed by the hospital. Staff understand that this supervisor has the legitimate power to assign shifts, approve leave, set departmental rules, direct how procedures should be done. Reward power. Reward power comes from a leader's ability to give rewards or benefits to others. Leaders who control resources such as promotions, salary increases, desirable assignments, or other incentives can influence how subordinates behave. Because followers depend on leaders for the financial and physical resources needed to do their work, they are often motivated to comply with the leader in order to receive these awards. Example: a manager gives a radiographer a preferred weekend shift or nominates them for an award because of good performance. The team works harder because they know the leader controls valuable rewards. Coercive power. Coercive power is the ability of a leader to punish or threaten punishment to influence others. It includes actions such as firing, demoting, reprimanding, criticizing, or withholding raises. For example, a manager can discipline an employee who performs poorly, which can negatively affect the employee's opportunities or reputation. Or a radiology supervisor writes up a technologist for repeatedly ignoring radiation safety protocols. Coercive power represents the negative side of position-based power because it relies on fear and consequences to gain compliance. Expert power. Expert power is the influence a leader has because of their specialized knowledge, skills, or experience. Subordinates follow their recommendations because they trust the leader's expertise. While supervisors often gain expert power through hands-on experience, top managers may have less expert power if employees know more technical details than they do. However, leaders like Mike Eskew of UPS, who deeply understand their organization's operations, maintain strong expert power. Individuals at any level who possess valuable knowledge can use it to influence decisions, support or challenge leaders, or even strategically share info to achieve desired outcomes. Example: a senior radiographer with intensive trauma experience knows the best positioning techniques for complex injuries. Because of this expertise, junior radiographers accept their instructions without hesitation, trusting that the expert knows the best approach towards the outcome. Referent power. Referent power is the influence a leader gains from personal qualities that inspire admiration, respect, and identification from followers. People comply because they like their leader and want to emulate their behavior. This type of power is rooted in personality rather than a formal position and is strongly associated with charismatic leadership, where followers feel a deep connection to the leader and often accept their ideas without question. All effective leaders use referent power to build trust, loyalty, and positive relationships with their followers. For example, a supervisor who treats staff with kindness, listens carefully to their concerns, and supports them during stressful situations earns deep respect from the team. Because employees admire the supervisor's personality and behavior, they willingly follow their guidance, even when decisions are tough. Not out of fear or obligation, but because they trust and look up to the leader. These are just 3 examples of well-known moments in history where power was displayed. Hitler's rise in Germany, 1933. Hitler's rise in Germany demonstrates how different forms of power and influence can shape national outcomes. He used charismatic referent power to gain public admiration through powerful speeches and emotional appeals, convincing people that he could restore Germany's strength. At the same time, he exercised expert-like power by presenting himself as the only leader who understood Germany's problems and solutions. Once in government, Hitler relied heavily on coercive power, using fear, intimidation, violence, and the elimination of opposition to secure obedience. Through the Nazi Party, he controlled rewards, jobs, and opportunities, giving him reward power that encouraged loyalty. His authority as Chancellor and later Führer also granted him legitimate power, allowing him to legally pass the Enabling Act and transform Germany into a dictatorship. By strategically combining all these forms of power with propaganda-based influence, Hitler was able to manipulate the public, strengthen his control, and dominate the German state. Queen Elizabeth II ruled for 70 years. Queen Elizabeth II ruled the United Kingdom for 70 years, and her leadership demonstrated strong use of legitimate and referent power. Her legitimate power came from her former role as monarch, which gave her constitutional authority, symbolic leadership, and the responsibility to represent the nation. However, her true impact came from the referent power as she earned global respect through her calm demeanor, consistency, dignity, and devotion to duty. People admired her character, not just for her title. Over decades, she used influence rather than force, shaping public attitudes, promoting stability, and guiding the nation through social, political, and cultural changes. Although she did not govern through laws on coercion, Queen Elizabeth II's ability to inspire loyalty, unity, and trust demonstrated how powerful personal influence can be in long-lasting leadership. Elon Musk, visionary innovator. Elon Musk demonstrates several forms of power through his role as a global business leader and innovator. He holds strong legitimate power as the CEO of major companies like Tesla, SpaceX, giving him the authority to make decisions and set strategies and goals. Musk also has significant expert powers because of his deep knowledge in engineering, technology, and space science, which makes followers trust his judgment. His bold personality and visionary ideas give him strong referent power, as many people admire him and are inspired by his ambition to change the world. Through these combined sources of power, Musk is able to influence employees, investors, customers, and even entire industries. Some moments in history where influence was displayed. Gandhi's Salt March in 1930. Gandhi's 1930 Salt March is one of the history's strongest examples of moral and inspirational influence. Without using force or holding official power, Gandhi inspired millions of Indians to join him in resisting British colonial rule by marching 240 miles to the sea to make salt. His influence came from his personal values, moral authority, and commitment to nonviolence, which earned him deep admiration and respect. Strong referent power. Gandhi used influence tactics such as leading by example, appealing to shared values, and demonstrating courage. His peaceful defiance changed public attitudes, united ordinary citizens, and pressured British authorities, showing how powerful personal influence can be in inspiring collective action and achieving social and political change. Malala advocating for girls' education, 2012 to present. Malala demonstrates powerful influence through her courage, personal story, and strong belief in girls' right to education. Even as a young girl, she spoke out against the Taliban's girls attending school, inspiring others with her bravery. After surviving an assassination attempt, Malala's voice became even stronger, and she used her experience to influence global leaders, governments, and millions of supporters worldwide. Her influence is based on referent power, as people admire her determination, moral strength, and commitment to equality. Through speeches, activism, and her foundation, Malala has changed public attitudes, brought international awareness to girls' education, and motivated others to join the fight for human rights. Answers to use of power. When leaders use different types of power, followers can respond in three main ways: compliance, resistance, and commitment. Compliance. Compliance occurs when people follow a leader's directions because of the leader's power, even if they do not personally agree with those instructions. In this state, followers usually do only the minimum work required, rather than giving their full effort. However, if a leader relies too heavily on position power, especially coercive power, followers may begin to see the leader's actions as unfair or excessive. When this happens, compliance can shift into resistance, where people avoid instructions, push back, or refuse to cooperate. For example, a supervisor assigns a weekend shift. Staff follow the instruction because the leader's authority, but they aren't enthusiastic about it, so they just comply. Resistance occurs when employees intentionally avoid following instructions, openly disobey a leader's orders. This reaction often happens when people feel that a leader's use of power is unfair, excessive, or not legitimate. Because resistance blocks cooperation and productivity, it shows that leaders who rely only on position power, such as authority or coercion, will have limited effectiveness. Real influence requires more than just giving orders. It requires trust, respect, and positive relationships. So usually resistance lead to delaying of work, avoid assignments, finding excuses not to comply, openly challenging the leader, showing negative attitudes, and reducing their efforts. Commitment. Commitment occurs when followers fully accept the leader's ideas or willingly carry out instructions with enthusiasm. Instead of merely disobeying or resisting, committed followers believe in leaders' vision and put in their best effort. Leaders are more likely to gain commitment when they rely on personal influence, trust, and respect, not just formal authority. This is seen in the example of Anu Shukla, who became more effective once she stopped depending solely on her position power and instead built stronger relationships and genuine influence with her employees. Anu Shukla's leadership journey shows how effective influence comes from personal power rather than relying solely on authority. Early in her career, she believed leaders got results by giving orders, but she soon realized that her employees were valuable contributors who needed support and not commands. By listening to their ideas, moving obstacles, and respecting their expertise, Shukla increased her referent and expert power, which helped her gain genuine commitment rather than mere compliance. This approach was especially important during the competitive non-dot-com era, when retaining talent depending on strong relationships, not formal authority. Her employees' loyalty was evident when many of them followed her to her next company, Rubicon Soft, with some even investing in it. Shukla's experience demonstrates that commitment is far more powerful than compliance, particularly during times of change, and that successful leaders use both personal and position power to influence others effectively. Role of dependency. Power in organizations is strongly shaped by dependency. When one person controls something others need, they gain power. The more someone depends on another for resources, information, or opportunities, the more power the person holds. This dependency shifts with economic conditions. When jobs are plentiful, employees are less dependent on managers, and leaders must rely more on personal power, such as respect and expertise, to keep workers committed. But when the unemployment is high and jobs are hard to find, employees depend more on their organization for financial security, giving leaders stronger position power. However, leaders who rely on a formal authority during such times may not gain full employee commitment. Genuine enthusiasm comes from leaders who also build personal influence through trust and respect. I now hand you over to my colleague, Sabrina.
My name is Sabrina and I will be doing the next part, which is control over resources. This is the second major source of leader power in control over resources. Draft 2008, page 368 states that departments that control money, materials, equipment, or human talent have more influence. Resource control creates dependency. Others rely on those who allocate or approve these assets. For example, finance departments hold power because they approve budgets. Purchasing departments influence operation by controlling supplies, and HR departments influence growth through staffing decisions. DAFT gives the example of managers with budget authority. They can shape the organization's direction simply by deciding which projects get funding. When resources are scarce, the power of those who control them increases. Ethical leaders must allocate resources fairly and transparently to maintain trust and effectiveness. Okay. So this slide is sources of leader power in organization. Right? So before we get into details, let's define leader power. According to DAFT, power is the potential or ability to influence others. Power arises when individuals or departments control something others depend on. DAFT calls these strategic contingencies. These include interdepartmental dependencies, control over resources, control over information, centrality, and coping with uncertainty. Today, we focus on these three interdepartmental dependency, control over resources, and control over information. Okay. The next slide is interdepartmental dependencies. So power in organization often comes from interdependence. Departments rely on each other to complete their work. This reliance is called interdepartmental dependencies. DAFT 2008, page 368, explains that power increases when departments depend on one another to perform key tasks. For example, in DAFT's study of a cigarette factory near Paris, the maintenance department became powerful because all other departments depended on it to keep machines running. No maintenance means no production, no profits, so maintenance gains influence. Dependency equals power, right? So more people depend on you is more power you have over them, right? In modern workplaces, the same patterns appear. IT departments, for example, have power because everyone depend on technology to do their jobs. Leaders who understand these dependencies can build corporations, prevent bottlenecks, and improve communication. Right? So my next slide is control over information. The third source of power DAFT discusses is control over information. Information is a vital resource in every organization. Leaders who manage or restrict access to data, reports, or communication channels can shape decisions or perceptions. According to DAFT, this informational control allows the leaders to influence outcomes indirectly by framing how others see a situation. So, depending on whatever information our higher ups have, is how they can shape how we see the company or how we see persons. DAFT gives an example of a CEO of CRN Corp, who use control over financial information to guide a strategic decisions. Departments such as IT, research, and finance often hold this kind of power because they manage data and communication systems. However, power over information must be used ethically. Leaders who hoard or manipulate information damage trust, while those who share it responsibly build cooperation and credibility. So they can either use it for good things or they can use it for bad things, because some persons could either blackmail you with it or they can lead you in the correct way with whatever information that is needed. Right? So to summarize these chapters, well, not chapters, but yeah, that was discussed, DAFT identifies several sources of leader power, but the three most relevant here are interdepartmental dependencies, control over resources, control over information. Interdepartmental dependencies: when others rely on your work, you gain influence. Control over resources: managing a critical input give authority. Control over information: access to and use of knowledge shape decisions. All of these create dependency relationship, which are the foundation of organizational power. The key is to use power ethically to empower others, not to control them. Ethical leaders use their influence for fairness, transparency, and organizational success. So in closing, leadership is about responsibility. Whether you control resources, information, or vital processes, true leadership means when using what you control to uplift others and advance the organization's goals, as DAFT reminds us, power, and serve the mission, not personal agendas. So as a future leader, let's remember, power isn't about dominance. It's about empowerment, collaboration, and trust. Thank you for listening.
All right. In the ending slides here, we have some of our references. Thank you so much for staying with us and for paying attention.